Okay, we're gonna continue on now with additional testimony from another witness from the applicant. But I just want to say I want to commend everybody that's here for being patient with us and really allowing our court reporter to do everything. You weren't loud and really thank you. I know it's difficult and it's emotional for everybody that's here. Everybody has an interest in it, but let this thing play out in an orderly fashion. And I'd like to commend everybody for the way that they've acted here tonight. So thank you, and we're going to go again. It's going to get another at least an hour.
We will stop at 9 and see where we are in the process.
And I just want to make sure that everyone's clear that despite whatever questions or comments that are made by the board has not made a decision. The board is a judicial body, so don't infer anything from any of the way the questions go, or whether there's objections, and whether there's sustained that there's any predisposition on the part of this board. No members of this board have discussed this either prior to the hearing or after the hearing's over on anything on making a decision. They're not, and I don't advise them of that. But there are certain procedures that have to be followed in terms of getting evidence in and out. And just because something doesn't come in or a question doesn't come in that way is not a reflection on what the board feels with regards to their ultimate decision. So don't read into any of that. Okay? Just let the information play out as it does. Okay? All right. Thanks a lot.
Our next witness is Michael Kissinger. I don't know if you've been sworn in.
Yeah, we swore
to swear everybody. Before we get started, I'm just going to hand out some pre-marked goodies for you.
What applicant number exhibit would this be?
So I have them marked as exhibit, I believe we're up to exhibit A9. Because we had Mr. Bistache we left off at Mr. Bistache's CV was A7 and his acoustical analysis was A8. And now we're up to the CV of Michael Kissinger is A9.
What was this?
A6 was the zoning ordinance, which we just obviously incorporated by reference.
Oh, perfect. Yep.
And could you state your name and business address?
Sure. My name is Michael Kissinger, and my business address is 1 South Church Street in Westchester, PA.
And with whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I am a senior engineer and project manager with Penn Forest.
And can you describe your educational background and qualifications for the board? And feel free to refer if you would like to your exhibit, which is marked as A9 in the board's package.
Sure. I am a civil engineer, graduated from Drexel University, and I have been doing land development at Penn for over 18 years.
And as a professional engineer, how many plans would you say you've designed and sealed over the years?
I would say it would be in the hundreds.
And as part of your role and responsibilities as a professional engineer to design and development plans, does that also include designing stormwater management facilities?
Yes, it does.
And as part of your responsibilities as a professional engineer, do you also engage in the third-party permitting process with respect to conservation districts and EDP?
Yes, just about every one of our projects require those third-party agencies.
And as part of your responsibilities, do you also review and interpret zoning ordinances?
Yes, we do. We also work for Penn sells our municipal engineers as well as private engineers. I myself sit on a board in my township, Tradition.
And have you previously appeared in municipal proceedings and been accepted as an expert in these proceedings?
Yes, I have.
And how many times would you say you've been before public boards?
Oh, before public boards, planning commission meetings and the like, I would say at least 1,000 over the years.
Have you ever not been accepted as an expert?
I have not.
And this comment would like to.
You're offering his testimony as an expert in what?
As a professional civil engineer.
Professional civil engineer. Does anybody have any questions regarding to what here relating to
I do, I just have one question, if I may. How many wind turbine projects have you designed?
This is my first.
Thank you.
We'll accept the testimony as an entry in those areas, and we understand relating to, question relating to the number of projects he has as it applies to wind turbines. But we'll see how your question works with that.
What is your role then with respect to this particular application?
Again, like as you mentioned, I'm a civil engineer and the project manager for the site in preparing this plan. What we did is take the turbine design that came from the client, reviewed it based on the zoning ordinance, and created this plan that you as part of the application.
And are you familiar with the requirements under the Penn Forest Township zoning ordinance?
Yes, I am.
And was your office involved in the preparation of the site plan, which was included as Exhibit 8I, that was previously submitted to the board at the last time?
Yes, we were.
And does that site plan, which I believe is going to be this evening, accurately depict what's being proposed?
Yes, it does.
And are you also familiar with the property that comprises the scope of the project area as well as the surrounding area?
Yes, I am.
And have you physically been to the site and walked the property?
I have.
Now, there seemed to have been some questions at the last hearing as to the parcels that were owned by the authority and which parcels comprise the subject project area. So can you explain for the board's edification exactly the scope of the project area? And feel free to refer to what I've marked as Exhibit 810,
Sure.
which is that other plan there.
I'll start with the plan that was part of the application. So you can see here there is a solid green line that goes around the entire portion of the project area. So there is a yellow area that is the area of Bethlehem Authority's land, but there is a internal line that is a green thick line. That is the line that is demarks the area of this project in this application. Again, based on the questions in the previous hearing, a plan was created to clarify that. And you'll see on this plan, what we did is basically patch the area inside that green line for the ease of your use.
So that plan is essentially the same, except for it's just color coded slightly different to demark the area of the project.
Yes, it is.
And based on your field observations and understanding of the existing conditions on those 16 parcels that comprise the project area that's subject to this application, do you know what use, if any, is currently being occupied on those parcels?
It is vacant land.
Are there any physical improvements that you're aware of associated with the Bethlehem Authority reservoir use that are located on those parcels comprising the project area?
There are no improvements on those parts.
So in your opinion, is there currently a principal use on the property?
Objection. He's a civil engineer. I don't know how he read this illegal.
That's going to be sustained. I think that's ultimately the legal decision for the board to make.
Okay. Who would typically determine the use of the property?
The landowner would have a desired use and relay that back to the zoning ordinance.
And can the landowner change that use?
Yes, through a process.
You heard Mr. Cobb this evening and at the last hearing as well provide detailed description of the proposal, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And do you agree with the representations that he made in his testimony with respect to his description of the plan and the improvements itself?
Yes, I do.
I'm going to object to that also. I don't know what he's agreeing to. What testimony? All the
You weren't
testimony?
at the last hearing, so
But how can you ask a question like that? Do you agree with what another witness testified? What kind of question is that?
I join in that objection.
That's going to be sustained. If you have a particular question with regard to what statement was made, or we ask those particular questions, but just to say we agree with everything you said,
All right, I'll move on. And is the subject property located in the R1 and the R2 zoning district?
Yeah, so the plan demarks the R1 and R2.
And is all of the entirety of the wind turbine use located within the R1 zoning district?
Yes, it is.
Does this current plan show an operation and maintenance building?
No, it does not.
And is it your understanding that the wind turbine use is permitted by special exception?
Objection. First of all, it's a leading question, but is his understanding that it's permitted?
Well, I was
Wind
gonna walk
turbine
you
use
through
is
the
permitted by
ordinance standards.
special exception? Again, that's a legal question, he's an engineer.
That's the whole reason we're here. you see.
We're here for a special exception. I mean, if you wanna step through those, we understand it, that he's not, this is an application for a special exception. He has to really, the question didn't really tell him whether it complies with the special exception or it doesn't. It's an application under special exception. You wanna ask him how the plan meets the specific requirements.
Yes. Are you familiar with the standards set forth in section 402A54 of the zoning ordinance governing the wind turbine use by special exception?
I am.
And did you design the plan in consideration of all those standards?
Yes, I did.
And in your professional opinion, does the proposal as shown on the plan comply with those applicable standards, including all area and bulk requirements?
Yes, it does.
Let's go through those specific standards within your expertise, obviously.
Mhm.
Starting with section 402A 54A, regarding the setbacks, does the plan comply with the minimum required setbacks based on the proposed height of the turbines?
Yes, it does. So as Mr. Poff had testified, this application is based on a turbine with the height of up to 600 feet. That 600 feet, the ordinance requires 3 times that height, which would be 1,800 feet setback from an existing occupied dwelling. That existing occupied dwelling setback line is shown on a red dashed line, and it is shown from the existing occupied dwellings on the plan. It's also shown in this vicinity. The application as shown, the closest existing occupied dwelling is 2,295 feet. So the closest turbine would be far in exceedance of the 1,800-foot setback.
And I believe that was to the southern portion of the property. What is the proposed actual distance to of the closest turbine to the closest residential, to the northern portion of the property?
To the northern portion, there is a distance of 5,742 feet as shown on this application. And additionally, to Hatchery Road, there is a distance of 5,227 feet as shown on the application.
And is the setback number also demarked on the key on the plan itself?
Yes, yes. In the legend, it refers to the 1,800-foot dimension.
And with respect to the second part of that subsection that you were just testifying to, 402A 54A1, which also requires a setback as to lot lines and street rights of way, does the site plan comply with that requirement?
Yes, again, the testimony of Mr. Pop had a hub height of approximately 370 feet. The closest turbine to the property line exceeds the 370 feet setback.
And you testified earlier that there were no physical improvements that you were aware of associated with the authority of reservoir use on the parcels that are actually comprising the scope of the application before this evening, is that correct?
That is correct.
And I believe you mentioned that the parcels would want to be consolidated and subdivided at the time of land development.
Yes, the parcels inside that green area, or the green line and the green area shown on the other side, would be consolidated at that time.
Is there anything that would prevent an applicant from actually proceeding forward with that process now with consolidation of lot lines or creating a subdivision?
No, we would not.
In fact, would that occur at any time irrespective of this project?
Yes, it could.
With respect to section 402A 54B, which requires that the turbines not be located within either the front, rear, or side yard for principal buildings, does the site plan comply with that requirement?
Yes, you do. Yes, it does. The front yard setback is 50 feet, the side yard is 40, and the rear is 35. By virtue of meeting the previous section of 370-foot setback, they do meet those requirements.
And lastly, with respect to the setback issue, does section 402A 54N requires that the electrical facilities meet building setback requirements, and does the plan comply with that as well?
Yes, it does. The facility is down here. It shows some dimensions to the front and to the side yard, and it does comply with the ordinance.
Are all the setbacks noted on the zoning chart?
They are noted in the zoning chart, yes.
With respect to underground wiring, will all of the new electrical wiring be located underground and feasible in compliance with section 402A 54E?
Yes, it is, and feasible.
And in compliance with the requirement for a site plan as set forth in 402A 54O, does the site plan that you prepared show the proposed driveways, location of turbines, and areas of woods proposed to be cleared or preserved?
Yes, it does. So, and again, as previously stated, this pink line shown on the plan is the limited disturbance that we have proposed on the property. So this is the maximum limited disturbance as shown on this site. We have tried to orient the plan to limit the amount and minimize that disturbance as possible. So again, you'll see that we've used this road, the existing roads as much as possible, widening them. However, also trying to match the grades to reduce the impact of slopes and to reduce overall the impact of the entire property. This line, as you see there, the pink line that outlines the entire area, the limit disturbance is roughly 4%, 4.15% of the property.
And do you know how much additional impervious coverage is proposed as part of this project?
It's less than 1%
And
of the property.
do you know how much impervious coverage is permitted in the R1 zoning district?
20%. So this property is allowed again 20%, and we are showing 1%, so drastically less than that allowed.
And is there any requirement that you're aware of under the zoning ordinance that governs the maximum disturbance area?
No, per se. There's a section in the ordinance that talks about tree disturbance along slopes, and that is denoted on the zoning chart, but there is no section about disturbing of the slopes, a maximum amount.
And you heard Mr. Pop testify previously that there were a number of factors that go into the siting, and that could be subject to some slight variations during the course of engineering and final design. But if that were to occur, would the plan still be compliant with all applicable air and bulk requirements and zoning ordinance requirements?
Absolutely. Again, so we realize that as you go through the different agencies and as we go through the conservation district and the different agencies that we move forward through this process, that their variations could occur to the plan. But again, I think there was a lot of questions about this at the last hearing. And so just for reference, when you look at this circle, the pink circle around the vicinity of each turbine, the diameter of that circle is approximately 500 feet. So the disturbance and the fluctuation or the massaging of those turbine locations that were described would be within those circles. Again, so it's not something where those turbines will relocate far off of this design. Again, as Mr. Pop stated, we'd love to build them in these locations, but the flexibility would be within those circles on that plan.
And is it your understanding that the applicant would be amenable to accepting as a condition of approval should the board grant this application, that to the extent there were any varying locations necessitated by virtue of environmental constraints, that the base of the turbine would in fact stay within that red hatch circle that you're showing on the plan?
That is my understanding.
And in fact, in your experience as both a municipal and private engineer, is it common for there to be slight changes to the locations of proposed structures at this stage, when it's conditional use or special exception stage, when you get to the time of engineering or land development?
Absolutely. It's very common for the plan to be refined as we go along, and again, as we go through the agencies that were listed in the previous hearing, we can, those slight variations are very common, happen all the time.
And in accordance with section 402A 54Q, assuming obviously the board would grant this application, would you be engineering a full land development plan to be submitted to the township for review by the board of supervisors?
Yes, land development plans will be prepared.
And although the application is for special exception and the applicant is not required to go through standards that are considered general standards, do you believe that the application does in fact comply with the general standards set forth in the zoning ordinance?
I do.
And let's walk through those standards, which are set forth in section 116C. The first one is 116C1, which requires compliance with all applicable ordinances. And I believe you just testified as to the requirements set forth in section 42A54 governing wind turbine use, that the application doesn't have to comply with the standard. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the next standard is compliance with all applicable state and federal law pursuant to section 116C2. And did you hear Craig testify previously that this is just the first step, the local process, and should this plan be approved, then the plan also has to proceed with 14 other third-party permitting and agency consultations.
Absolutely.
Objection. I'm not sure if the question was if he knew that or if he heard Craig testify as to that. I mean, the question was, did you hear Craig testify earlier these things? And your answer was yes. So your answer, all you ask is, did he hear it? As we all heard it. Is that the testimony?
Is it your understanding that in addition to the local process, there's also 14 other permitting, third-party agency, federal and state and county permitting that would be required to implement this plan?
Yes, this is the first step along this permitting standards.
And the next standard set forth in section 116C3 relating to traffic and whether the proposed use will be accommodated in a safe and efficient manner that would minimize hazards and congestion. And do you believe that this particular use will have any impact with respect to traffic and highway congestion?
No, I do not believe so. The use, again, has very limited amount of occupants. Mr. Paul testified to the people that would be on site on a regular basis. There's very limited number of people. There is a Reservoir Road and Hatchery Road is a state route that runs through the property. So there would not be any impact to township roads. And again, very limited traffic based on the number of occupants.
And in your opinion, as a professional engineer representing both private and municipal clients, is temporary construction traffic an appropriate consideration in evaluating land use?
No, in a use itself, we understand that temporary construction and activities would be permitted by building permits and with other, road opening permits and so on, but not part of the zoning application.
And do you believe that the plan that you designed has the appropriate site planning, including proper site layout, internal circulation, to the extent applicable parking and buffering, where relevant in section 116C4?
Yes, again, so what we've tried to do is utilize the existing roads to the extent possible, so that way, yes, we will be widening them, but we would still be utilizing the back corridor. We've also tried to orient, again, those roads to limit the amount of disturbance where possible. Again, this project shows a disturbance of around 4%.
And the next standard relates generally to the neighborhood and not substantially changing the character of the neighborhood. And from a legal perspective, I've said this a number of times, permitted by special exceptions is deemed to be inherently beneficial and suitable use for the property. However, do you agree that this particular project will not substantially change the character of the neighborhood greater than another wind turbine project, especially given some of your prior testimony about what's being proposed in excess of applicable ordinance requirements?
Again, agreed. So this turbine project is at 1% impervious versus an allowable 20% with a very minimal limited disturbance and very limited amount of occupants would have virtually no impact on traffic and also try to maintain as much as humanly possible that disturbance. So in my opinion, the character has not changed.
And in fact, with any development of this property or any property has some impact on
Exactly. So this property could be developed for various different uses, all of which would be subjected to the same percentages, which again is a 20%, and we're looking at an application of approximately 1%.
And do you believe that this particular use would have any impact on public infrastructure?
No, again, so this use, again, is state road, so therefore there would have no impact to township roads. There would be no sewer impact to it, very limited traffic again based on those folks. So again, limited impact to infrastructure, if any.
And in accordance with section 116C7, is the proposed use suitable for the site conditions in consideration of the steep slopes, woodlands, wetlands, and other natural features of the property?
Yes, it is.
And although not a requirement before this board, do you believe that the proposed development will be designed in accordance with all applicable stormwater management requirements?
Yes, one of those steps that we're going to need to take is the Conservation District approvals and NPDES approvals. So this, NPDE. So we will need to comply in the project and the road alignments would need to have stormwater BMPs and so on that we would get into in the later stages of the project.
And do you have any reason to believe that this plan would not be able to comply with all those applicable stormwater requirements?
No, with the vicinity, with the distances of the turbines to the different facilities and the size of the parcel, I do not have a concern.
Will the drainage from the facilities be designed to avoid increasing any runoff in the residential areas?
Yes, it will. The majority of the turbines actually drain to an internal systems. There are 3 turbines on the south side that do drain to a waterway that would head towards residential area, but again, we would design those stormwater structures to avoid that.
So in your professional opinion, do you believe there will be any runoff impact to the surrounding community?
No, I do not.
And in your professional opinion, experience with designing stormwater facilities over the last 20 years, do you believe there will be any adverse impacts to private wells or river supply?
No, again, based on the vicinity and the distances that we're talking about, no.
And should the turbine locations change slightly, and I believe you mentioned still would be within that red hatch circle line, would that modification change your responses to any of these questions I asked you this evening?
No, it would not.
And in fact, were you mindful of possible site variations in the locations of turbines when you were designing the plan?
Yes, we took conservative approaches again to the road layouts and those circumstances.
In connection with tonight's hearing, have you had an opportunity to review the zoning officer's review letter dated February 23rd, 2018?
Yes, I have.
And that review letter is marked as Exhibit A11. I couldn't remember previously marked it in the beginning of the board. Referring to page 2 of that letter, it appeared that there were just the 3 items that the zoning officer suggested would require additional information for the time of hearing. I believe only one of them is within your purview with respect to the setbacks. So can you address the setback issue that was raised in that review letter?
Sure, and so reading through this, I think what it's asking for is a clarification as to the various setbacks. And again, those same setbacks that I've described already in the testimony. But just going through it, the red circles shown on the plan show an 1,800-foot separation from existing occupied dwellings. The zoning chart calls out the 370-foot setback for the from the internal property lines, and also the zoning chart calls out for the principal building setbacks of the as outlined in the ordinance as well.
So in your opinion, does the plan already comply with the setback requirements?
Yes, and we'd be willing to provide clarifications to the zoning officer's setback.
Okay, so to the extent that any other dimensions the zoning officer requested, you would be agreeable to add those dimensions to the plan?
Yes.
That's all the questions I have.
Just so I'm clear, I know there were some questions, there was objection by the attorney manager. The fact that you certify, that we accepted him as an expert in civil engineering, and all of your questions basically left with the legal conclusion, does the plan comply with the ordinance? So you asking this board, because he's an expert, he testified that the plan complies, so you have to take that as expert testimony, or is that a legal conclusion that the board has to come up with?
Well, I would ask that the board accept him as a professional engineer designing the plan, walking through those specific standards that were relevant to his expertise, not all of those.
I can tell you that the board is not, because he said that the plan complies with the zoning ordinance, I think that's a legal conclusion that the board has to meet and determine, and whether it's granting a, special exception. And so if you're offering him as an expert in civil engineering, to the extent that he says and testifies that he's developed a plan, and this is how the plan meets this section, and meets this section, and meets this section, but in your expert opinion, does the plan comply with the zoning orders? I think that's a legal conclusion for the board to make, and that's why I'm asking that, because otherwise, why even have a hearing? Just bring him in and say, plan complies. We have a zoning officer who's an engineer who went through their provisions, and the township has an engineer that's gonna review, and you've been in front of numerous, planning commissions where the engineer for the municipality said, you need this, this, and this pursuant to the planning or, the saldo, and you have this in your plan, and you feel it doesn't apply, there's a little back and forth with that. That's what my question is on this.
Well, I was walking through the
Okay.
special exception standards. I wasn't gonna walk them through the whole zoning ordinance, because we're not
No,
seeking
but
a
what
variance.
you said, there was a question, does the plan meet the requirements for the special exception? I think that was a
Yeah,
question,
well-
and he said yes, and that's why I'm asking, because he said that and asked that question and answered it, and I know I may have been short with an objection over there, but it was, for to the extent that it's a legal conclusion, we're not supposed to take his testimony as an expert and just have the board say, well, we had an expert testify, we have to accept it, that it meets the criteria for the granting of the special exception. I think that's a legal conclusion for that board to make, am I correct with that?
You're correct with that, but what I was walking through was demonstrating how the plan does in fact comply with those
Okay,
various
all right.
sections of the ordinance,
I
with the
do.
setbacks, with.
Okay, now we're on the same sheet.
Yeah,
That's, I know the phrasing of certain questions, and I know council did, and I'm not trying to, sua sponte, bring up an objection, but I wanted to just be clarified so that the board's
Right.
aware of it, that because you made a statement like that it wasn't an expert opinion that they had to basically follow, since there's no, in case there's not another expert.
Like, for example, the site plan's required to show, certain areas of disturbance, to be clear.
Right.
So I wanted him to explain that the marked line, the red hatch line,
Okay.
that was the disturbance area, and that it wasn't in fact shown on the plan.
Yeah, I understood it, as long as I think we're on the same sheet with you then.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Any cross-examination, should we go in that particular order? Mr. Anders?
Sure. If I may, I'm gonna just approach because I can't see the plan. And then I'll sit down.
You prepared this, obviously.
Yes.
You prepared the previous one in 2016?
Objection,
I missed that. What was
yes, it was the
the-
previous plan prepared in 2016.
I just asked if you prepared it.
Short leash, I know, where we go with the other plan?
Well, I guess, couple questions. What does IBER refer to on the lower right-hand corner?
An accounting reference to within my company.
Okay. Where I was going with that, it seems to me that you signed the previous site plan, is that correct? If you don't recall, it's fine. Did you sign this one?
No, the sign and seal is not on there.
So your signature's not on here, correct?
No,
And your seal's not on there, correct?
that is correct.
The turbines are in an R1 district?
Yes, they are.
What use is being made in the R2 district? You said earlier part of the project's in the R2 district. So what is the use that is being made in that R2 district?
There is a substation in the R2 district.
Could you elaborate? What does the substation, what's its purpose?
Again, it's a substation for the purpose of collecting the energy.
Is it an accessory use to the principal use?
That would, I think as you said before, that's not in my review of the uses. So again, what I'm saying is that there's a substation there in R2. There are no turbines in R2.
Well, how would you characterize that that use of the substation? What is it? Is it a principal use, an accessory use?
I think it's, as an engineer, I'm here to testify about the turbine locations that are in R1, and I think I've stated that there's a substation in R2.
And you don't have an opinion as to whether it's a principal use, that substation, or an accessory use?
My engineering opinion is based on these turbines in R1.
I understand that, but and if you, please, I'd ask you to just answer the question. Do you have an opinion with regard to what that use is in R2, what of that substation? If you don't have an opinion, you can say so.
I do not have an opinion.
You've reviewed the zoning ordinance, obviously,
Yes.
and I'm going to direct you to section 801B2. That's on page 8-1. Are you there?
Please repeat the section.
It is 801B2. And I'll, just for sake of brevity, I'll read it to you and ask if I've read it correctly. A lot within a residential district shall not include more than one principal use and shall not include more than one principal building unless specifically permitted by this ordinance. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
And this project is within a residential district, correct?
Correct.
So you would agree then that a lot within a residential district, according to this ordinance, shall not include more than one principal use?
I believe the ordinance says that.
So it's very clear, is it not?
That the words stand for themselves.
And is your testimony that a vacant lot or vacant land is a use in and of itself?
Objection, for the same reason that Mr. Nanovic said that this witness wasn't qualified to offer a legal opinion, I would object on the same basis.
This is cross-examination.
Well, I tried asking the same question and it got sustained.
Your application says that you're subdividing or consolidating so that the proposed wind energy use will be located on separate lots from the Bethlehem Authority reservoir use. Is that what your application says?
I have to refer to the application.
Please do.
Can you specifically refer to him to what portion of the application
I have
we're
it
talking
highlighted
about?
if you want it. It's right there. Highlighted. I think that's what it is.
Yes, yes.
Can you borrow mine?
Are you there, Mr. Kissinger?
I am.
Am I correct in that the application
Hold on a
says?
second.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Am I correct in that your application says that you're doing so that the proposed wind energy use will be located on separate lots from the Bethlehem Authority reservoir use?
Yes, that's what it says.
Would you point out to the board exactly what lots the wind turbines are going to be on?
The wind turbines are listed on parcel numbers listed on this chart there.
Okay, would you show me where parcel number 37-51-A7.04 is located on your map?
I cannot do that on this map. These, all those areas are within the green parcel line.
Well, I understand that, but you talk about separate lots in your application.
I refer to these lots being consolidated into one lot as shown by the green line.
And I'm asking you to show me where those separate lots are. Specifically, you couldn't identify where the first one was. Can you tell me where the second lot is? 37-51-A9.
There are parcel lines depicted. You can see the smaller gray lines through the parcel. So if you count up those parcels, all 16 lots are depicted in this section here and within that green line.
And point out to me where 37-51-A9 is.
It's within the green line.
Where is it?
It's not, that label is not on the plan, sir.
So you're saying it's gonna be on different lots, but you can't identify where the lots are.
The lots are shown here with the gray line.
But I understand that all the lots are shown with gray lines, but I'm asking about specific, you can't identify specific lots.
They're not labeled on the plan, sir.
Why not?
These lots here are within the turbine boundary on the green line.
I don't understand, why aren't they labeled?
The plan has a reference to the different areas back to this chart with based on the owner. So those parcels are with the owner boundary.
Well, you're not answering my question, though.
Mr.
I'm asking
Anders,
you.
we can provide you with the tax map if that's what you would like to see.
No, I'm asking him to identify, and I'll get away from this in a second, I just want to, if you can identify those parcel numbers and their location, their specific location.
Based on the scale of the plan, based on this location, we provided a parcel chart that shows those, and we showed individual labels to that. The information can be provided as,
But it's not provided here.
it is not on the plan.
Isn't it fair to say that this application is simply an amended plan?
This application stands for itself, sir.
Did you prepare the narrative in support of the application?
No, I did not.
Have you read the narrative?
It's part of this application right here, sir?
Yes.
Yes.
Could you point out to me the differences in the narrative between the first plan and the second plan?
Objection.
How is that relevant to changes between the first plan and the second plan?
Well, he's just testified that it's not an amended plan, it's a new plan. I'm trying to determine what the differences are,
And
other than the general.
What's the relevancy for the board in determining whether this plan, because that's the only plan that's before the board?
Because I think the relevancy is whether it's an amended plan or a brand new plan. I think it's an amended plan. I'll withdraw the question. I'm going to direct your attention to section 105C of the zoning ordinance. It's on page 1-7. And I'll just ask you if I've read this correctly. It says, the zoning officer shall literally apply the wording of this ordinance in the location of all district boundaries to particular applications. Did I read that correctly?
You're asking me if you read this correctly?
Yes.
I think the words stand for themselves, sir.
I asked you if I read it correctly. I understand the words stand for themselves. Did I read it correctly?
You read part of the section. You read the first section, the first sentence of that section.
Do you agree with me that at the zoning hearing board level, the literal text of the zoning ordinance must be followed?
Again, I think that this zoning section stands for itself. I don't have an opinion as to what that states, other than what it reads, sir.
Well, I'm asking whether you agree with me that at this level, the literal text of the zoning ordinance must be followed.
I don't agree with that. I don't understand the question.
You don't understand that the literal text should not be followed? Is that what you're saying?
Sir, the zoning ordinance says that what it says. I don't understand what you're trying to get to. You read the sentence. I don't understand what you're trying to get me to make an opinion on.
Well, whether you agree that you've got to follow the literal text, what the zoning ordinance says.
If you're asking me if I have to follow the zoning ordinance for this project, then I think the answer is yes.
Thank you. It appears that you, on your site plan, that you amended the parcel data table with a separate column that you labeled use. Is that correct?
I don't know what you mean by amended. This is the only plan that we've prepared for this site, or for this project, this application.
Well, can you explain that section where it says use?
I think it stands for itself. It's the use of those 16 parcels in wind turbine.
Is your testimony that those parcels that you list as wind turbine use, they're no longer going to be used by the Bethlehem Authority for the production of potable water?
I believe that my plan states it out there. I can't make that, I think you said the legal determination.
Well, I'm asking you what your interpretation
My
is.
understanding is that those 16 parcels as listed will be wind turbine used.
And will they no longer be used by the Bethlehem Authority for the production of potable water?
The proposed use of those 16 parcels is wind turbine as shown on that chart.
Well, how are they being used now? As vacant land?
Vacant land.
Are they being used at all by the Bethlehem Authority?
They are vacant land.
So Bethlehem Authority makes no use of those parcels.
Sir, it is vacant land.
Are those parcels somehow going to no longer be part of the Bethlehem watershed?
The surrounding area is still within the watershed, including the residential parcels across the north. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm asking, you're doing this, you put this use there where you say that certain parcels that you can't identify are going to be used for wind turbines, and all I'm saying is, are they going to continue to be used by the Bethlehem Authority?
So they're vacant land. They will be used as a wind turbine in the future.
And no other use?
Sir, the use is listed on the plan as wind turbine for those 16 parcels.
So that leads me to the question I'll ask again. Are those parcels somehow no longer going to be part of the Bethlehem watershed?
If the stormwater from those turbine locations will drain internal, as I testified, if that's what you're trying to get
No,
at.
what I'm asking, and maybe I'm asking it incorrectly, are those parcels somehow no longer going to be part of the Bethlehem watershed?
Define the watershed.
Well, all of the property that is owned by Bethlehem Authority in that area is the watershed.
These properties will be having, inside the green line, will have a use of wind turbine.
I'll ask it one more time, and then I'll move on. So are those parcels that you say are now going to be used for wind turbines, are they somehow magically removed from the Bethlehem watershed?
Sir, they are wind turbine used for those 16 parcels.
Okay. I'll move on. You obviously don't want to answer the question. Is Atlantic Wind buying those parcels?
I'm sorry?
Is Atlantic Wind buying those parcels?
I'm not part of those discussions. I'm an engineer that designed this plan.
Are you aware whether they're buying them or not? And if you're not
I'm
aware, are you going to fence them off from the rest of the watershed?
I'm not aware of any plans.
Your site plan refers to a utility use. Where does it say? On the chart?
Yes, it does.
Where is the utility use found in the zoning ordinance? I wasn't able to locate it.
It's just a description of the parcels, of those parcels.
I understand that, but you're saying it's a utility use. Where is utility use defined in the zoning ordinance?
I don't believe it is, sir.
So you're just calling it a utility use without any reference to the zoning ordinance?
Plan calls it a utility use.
Your plan calls it a utility use.
Yes, it does.
Bethlehem Authority is not a public utility company, is it?
I'm not aware of that.
Is the Bethlehem Authority a public utility as defined by the zoning ordinance?
I'm not aware of that.
Can you look at the zoning ordinance?
I am not going to interpret the zoning ordinance It's not part of.
I thought that's what you do, you said on direct examination. You interpret zoning ordinances to determine whether plans comply with the zoning ordinance. Isn't that what you testify that you do?
Yes, you're asking for a specific use that is outside of my review of this plan.
Well, you reviewed the entire zoning ordinance, didn't you?
I did review the entire ordinance, yes.
And my question is the Bethlehem Authority a public utility as defined by the ordinance?
I do not have an opinion on that, sir.
Okay. Is a public utility use a by right use in the zoning ordinance in the R1 and R2 districts?
Again, I'm here to talk about the parcels within this green line and the wind turbine.
So you're refusing to answer that question, or you don't know the answer?
My testimony is about the wind turbine parcel.
I know what you want to testify to, but I'm cross-examining you, and I'm asking you questions, and if you say, I don't know, that's an acceptable answer, or if you say, I refuse to answer, that's acceptable. Is a public utility use a by right use in the zoning ordinance that you reviewed in the R1 and R2 districts?
Sir, I reviewed based on whether or not the wind turbines are an acceptable use within the R1 district. That is my testimony about the wind turbine use within R1.
Is it your feeling that I can't ask you anything other than that?
I believe that you can ask me questions about what I testified about, but the purview of my testimony is about the wind turbines within R1.
Okay, so you either don't have an opinion or you're refusing to answer the question I just asked.
Yeah, I think we're at that point, because you were qualified as an expert, you indicated that you reviewed zoning ordinances, and you reviewed this one, and as an expert, as a civil engineer, I think that question, either it's a yes or no, or you didn't review it, so you can't comment on it.
I'm saying that I did not review it, sir. I did not review those parcels. I reviewed, my limit of review was within the green lines of that application, shown the application.
Well, you want to take a look at the definition of public utility in the zoning ordinance, and then answer the question?
My testimony is about the area within the green lines.
Fine.
And if I could object, we're not here on other properties that is marked as utility. That is not the scope of this application, so I don't know why the question is relevant to what the authority is doing with that property. That property is not subject to the application that's before the board.
The site plan says utility on it, utility
I
use.
think it's within the scope. He qualified him as an expert. He's a civil engineer. He has a plan. He's indicated that there's that the owner of the property and they have a use down as utility. And I think it's a fair question as to whether he's going to need to answer it.
The application.
The application is about the 16 parcels within the green boundary. So my opinion is that the R1 district, as depicted by the green line, has a wind turbine use, and that is a permitted use by special exception. That's my opinion on this application. The surrounding parcels.
Don't the site or the requirements of the ordinance require you to show the use of adjoining parcels?
And I show it as utility. But I'm not offering an opinion as to whether or not that utility is a permitted use.
Okay, well, again, we could be here all night trying to get him to answer the question, so I'll move on. Are you familiar with the use government facility other than township owned as defined in this ordinance?
Again, I'm aware of that is one of the sections of one of the permitted uses.
So you are familiar with that use?
I'm aware that it is one of the permitted uses.
Is a government facility a by right use in either R1 or an R2 zone?
How's an objection to the relevance of this application? We're not here for government use, we're here for wind turbine use.
This gentleman has been offered as an expert. I think I have a right to cross-examine him with regard to questions or matters that are in this zoning ordinance.
About what the government use has to do with our application.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I think if he reviewed the zoning ordinance and he's a civil engineer, and he was certified as an expert, and was not objected to it, he can certainly cross-examine him on the understanding of the ordinance. I think it's a fair question. It's his knowledge of the ordinance, it's going toward, it may even be going toward his credibility as a civil engineer or as an expert. So I think it's allowed, and we overruled the objection.
What section, sir?
Well, its definition is government facility other than township owned, found on page 2-11.
I see it.
And the question then is a government facility a by right use in either an R1 or R2 zone?
It's a government facility, the township government uses are permitted, the government facility are permitted by special exception.
So it's not a by right use, correct?
I believe I just said permitted by special exception.
Okay, turn to page 2-19 and take a look at the definition of public utility.
I'm there, sir.
Have you had an opportunity to to read that?
I read it.
Is the Bethlehem Authority a public utility as defined in this ordinance?
Objection, I don't know that he can speak for what the Bethlehem Authority is.
Well, he's reviewed the ordinance, he's offered as an expert.
What their bylaws are, their operating government.
If he doesn't know, say you don't know.
I don't know the bylaws of the Bethlehem Authority.
They're the owners of this property, though. You know that, correct?
I'm aware.
Well, would you agree with me that the Bethlehem Authority is not exempt from any requirements of the zoning ordinance?
I would not agree with you on that. I don't know what that's based on.
We'll take a look at section 115, page 1-13.
That section states, the zoning ordinance shall not apply to uses or structures owned by Penn Forest Township or by municipal authority created solely by Penn Forest for uses and structures that are intended for public utility, stormwater, public recreation, or public health and safety purpose.
So would you agree with me that this proposed use and structures are not owned by Penn Forest Township?
Correct.
And would you agree with me that the proposed uses and structures are not owned by a municipal authority created solely by Penn Forest Township?
Created solely by Penn Forest Township?
Right.
So you're asking if, no, I would agree with you, yes.
Okay. So would you therefore agree that Bethlehem Authority is not exempt from the provisions of the zoning ordinance?
No, I don't believe that they are, but again, I am not aware of Bethlehem Authority.
You don't, you believe that the ordinance applies to Bethlehem Authority, they're not exempt, just so
I
I
believe
have.
it applies to our property, yes.
Are you're of course familiar with section 103D of the zoning ordinance? That's on page 1-3.
Yes.
And 103D2 enumerates what the site plan should contain, correct?
Yes.
And D2A requires the site plan to show the location, dimension, and uses of existing and projected structures. Isn't that correct?
Proposed.
I'm sorry, proposed structures? I'm correct? Does your site plan that you prepared show the dimensions of the proposed structures?
It shows the location and it lists the height. And yes, it does.
Your answer then is that the only dimensions are location and height and nothing further?
There's a line that is by the graphic scale, can be scaled off to dimension those areas, so they are graphically shown to scale.
So, and I'll ask it again, just so I'm clear, does the site plan you prepared show the dimensions of all the proposed structures?
It does not show physical, an actual leader with a number, but each one are dimensionable because they are at scale.
What about the Met Towers? Does your plan show the dimensions of the Met Tower?
No, it does not.
Does your plan show the dimensions of this substation?
Yes, it's dimensional. It is to scale and dimensional.
So you've complied with that at least, but you've not complied with the other parts of the or the ordinance with regard to the other structures, correct?
Again, they are drawn to scale and therefore dimensional.
D2A also requires that you show the existing and proposed uses of areas of land, correct?
Correct.
And does the site plan you submitted show the existing and proposed uses of areas of land?
Yes.
Well, what does it show as the existing use of this property?
He talks about the proposed use.
No, the existing use.
It's vacant land.
Where does it show that on your site plan? Where any of the notes, on any of your charts, does it say existing use vacant land?
It does not.
So you agree with me that the site plan that you submitted does not show the existing uses of areas of land? The site plan doesn't show it, does it?
The site plan does not specifically state that it's vacant.
Thank you. Note number 7 on the site plan. Can you read that? And if you're closer than I am, I'd ask you if you would read that aloud.
Talking about plan note number 7?
The one that states the entire project area is located within the Wild Creek watershed.
Okay. The entire project area is located within the Wild Creek watershed, which is classified as exceptional value waters, EV, and migratory fishes, MF, by Title 25, Chapter 96, Pennsylvania Code.
Is it true that you testified earlier some of the turbines are draining away from the project?
They are draining to the south, yes.
And are the stormwater discharges discharging to steep slopes?
Yes.
Okay, getting back to number 7, you say the entire project area. What is the entire project area?
The area within the green parcel boundary.
When you subdivide, are you going to take certain parcels out of the Wild Creek watershed?
We're not going to remove them from the watershed, I don't believe.
They're still going to be part of the watershed, aren't they?
Yes. The Wild Creek watershed, yes.
Yeah, those subdivided parcels, if and when you do them, they're still going to be in the watershed, correct?
Yes, the watershed refers to a regional area where it drains to.
Speaking of subdivisions and consolidations that you mentioned in the application, where are they shown on the site plan?
We show this green line being depicted as the area to be consolidated.
Into one parcel?
Yes.
So you're going to consolidate all of the parcels into one parcel?
That's what's shown on the plan?
Well, is that what you're going to do?
Yes, I mean, yes, that's what we're going to do.
And what's going to happen to the rest of the parcels?
They're going to remain as is.
So isn't it true that you're just going to move lot lines around to suit your needs? Isn't that what's really going on here?
We're consolidating the property, which is, I believe, a right of the landowner.
Well, your first application never referenced
Objection.
consolidating and subdividing parcels, did it?
That's gonna be sustained,
Okay.
we're not here for that.
Fine, I'll move on. But you're doing end around here partially to try to eliminate objectors, aren't you?
I'm sorry.
You're doing it end around,
Objection.
and you're, part of the reason is you're trying to eliminate objectors, aren't you?
Objection.
Well, you can answer the question.
What's the relevance of that? You already testified that the landowner is within the purview to subdivide the property.
Okay, but I think it's cross-examined. It's interesting, because I wasn't here on the first one, and I don't know how that was laid out and who were objectors, but if the lots are consolidated, does that eliminate it? I think it's a fair question. Does it eliminate people? What's the purpose of eliminating the lot lines? What's the purpose?
The purpose of the consolidation can occur, and I believe as what has been talked about is the principal use. What we decided to do is to consolidate those lots. I cannot speak to the purpose. That was the goal of the parcel, is to consolidate those lots as defined by the project.
Come on, you can't speak to the purpose? You just mentioned you're worried about principal use, aren't you?
Mr. Anders, Mr. Pop can testify. He testified the first
Well,
time.
he can testify all he wants. I'm asking this witness.
My client directed me to subdivide the parcel as depicted.
No discussion as to why you're doing that?
I reviewed it in terms of whether or not it was permitted in zoning, and that was my review of that process.
But that's not the question. The question is, was there any discussion between you and Mr. Pop as to why you were directed to do that?
No,
Just said, do it, and you said, okay.
I made sure it complied with the ordinance, and I showed it on the plan.
You're asking, I'll just ask, is this true? You're asking the zoning hearing board to approve your application for a special exception, but you don't identify the property upon which the use will be, correct? You can't tell us exactly what the property is going to look like, can you?
I don't understand the question.
Well, you haven't done a subdivision. Shouldn't you have done a subdivision first?
No, I believe that subdivisions, in my experience, can be done throughout the process, can be run concurrently with land development, and those subdivisions can be done at different times during the process.
My question was, shouldn't it have been done first in this case?
I don't have an opinion on when it should have been done.
And by the way, Atlantic Wind doesn't have authority to subdivide this property, does it? Don't look to anybody to answer the question for you. If you don't know the answer, say I don't know.
All right. Not the lawyer.
Does Atlantic Wind have the authority to subdivide this property?
I am not aware of the agreement, I am not purview to the agreement between Atlantic Wind and Bethlehem Authority. The landowner does have the ability, I am not aware of that agreement.
Is Atlantic Wind the landowner?
I don't know what the agreement between Atlantic Wind and Bethlehem Authority.
I understand that. I moved on to the next question. Is Atlantic Wind the landowner?
No, Bethlehem Authority is.
Where's the operation maintenance building going to be?
I'm not aware of where it is.
You've had no discuss. Well, isn't the operation safety building a necessary for the safe and efficient operation of a wind turbine?
Sir, my client relocated that facility off of the property.
No, I
I'm
understand.
not here to talk about the turbines, as
Well,
you guys have pointed out. I'm
that's-
not aware of where that location is.
And I understand. Well, I didn't even ask you that. Maybe I did earlier, but I moved on. All I'm saying is this: isn't it true that the operation safety building is necessary for the safe and efficient operation of a wind turbine?
That is outside of my expertise.
If it is necessary for the safe and efficient operation of a wind turbine, wouldn't that be an accessory use?
It's outside of my expertise
You don't have expertise on accessory use?
on wind turbines.
I think that one's a little bit too far.
Okay.
Fetched, because he doesn't know where it's going to be located, or that it is an essential use. That was outside of the scope, so I don't think he could It's a little hypothetical.
Very, very well. Are there steep slopes in this project area?
Yes, there are.
Are there woodlands?
Yes,
You agree with me that the zoning ordinance requires that the proposed use be suitable for the site condition, considering the steep slopes and woodlands?
yes, I am.
Are steep slopes shown on your site plan?
No, they are, the amount of steep slopes within the woodlands are noted in the zoning chart.
Are the steep slopes shown on your site plan?
Didn't he answer the question?
He said something about steep slopes. I didn't hear him say yes or no. Are steep slopes shown on your site plan?
I said no, the
Fine.
amount of.
Are
concrete
woodlands-
is
are woodlands
in
shown?
Let him answer.
Finish answer.
The zoning chart states limit of tree clearance on slopes greater than 15% as 0.1582% in the R1 section.
Well,
In R1 and in R2, it states that it is 0.0146%.
So the question is, are the steep slopes shown on the map?
No, the disturbance is noted.
are woodlands shown on your site plan?
No.
We've been through this, but we're going to go through it one more time. You're familiar with the definition of principal use as found in the Penn Forest Township zoning ordinance?
Yes.
And am I correct that principal use as defined in the ordinance is a dominant use or main use on a lot as opposed to an accessory use?
Objection, again, I think you sustained it earlier as to what, it's a legal conclusion, what considered use is.
Well, I'll ask him to read the definition of principal use. It's 2-19.
A dominant use or main use on a lot as opposed to an accessory use.
And it's your testimony that the principal use of the project area right now is vacant land.
Correct.
Have you reviewed the conservation easement?
I have not.
Isn't it customary for a design engineer to review any documentation that may place an encumbrance on the project area?
We're here to talk about a zoning plan and the zoning ordinance.
And if you, and that's fine, I understand you don't want to talk about certain things, and so you say what we're here to talk about, but I'm cross-examining, I'm asking these questions. So if you haven't reviewed the conservation easement, just say so.
I already said that.
Okay. How about the lease agreement between Bethlehem Authority and Atlantic Wind?
I have not reviewed it.
How about the documents submitted to the Federal Energy Regulatory